What?
It's time now for My Two Favorite Librarians, brought to you by Copper Tree Boutique in Dales Grand Market, located in beautiful, historic downtown Amherst.
Hi, this is My Two Favorite Librarians. I'm Denise Corey.
I'm Chantel Taylor, and today we're talking about trilogies.
Yes.
Which is a favorite author thing. Don't you think there are a lot of trilogies in the world?
There are a lot of trilogies. My question is, do you think that when an author writes the first book that they plan a trilogy, or do you think it just kind of organically is born out of wanting to know what those characters are going to do next?
I think it's a bit of both. I think a lot of times you can see that the author is hoping that this will turn into a duology or a trilogy, and so you've got that cliffhanger, and then they have to stretch it.
Because, I find that sometimes...
The second book is the filler book.
Yeah. Like, the first book will be so
good.
But
they have so much more time.
All you want is to read the second book. And the second book will be like, meh.
And then all the action is in the third book.
Yeah.
But I think even, and now obviously I write nothing, so I have no idea. But I think...
I write grocery lists.
Yeah. I mean, I have no real experience in this, but I think so much time gets spent on that first book and getting it ready to hand into publishers, and it has to be perfect. And like, you give this like baby to the publishers, and then they just make it that much better. And then it's like, oh, we need another book in 6 months.
Yeah. Because we've got to capitalize on the popularity of this.
And so even if some things, like even if you're like, oh, I can see this in 3 books, and you have a story arc going on, it's not necessarily easy to fill in all those holes.
And sometimes I think they've written the whole trilogy, or they've written like a really long book, and it gets split up by a publisher.
Which sometimes isn't cool either, because it depends how. I know Penny Reed wrote a series, and really it should have been one book. It should not have been divided up into 3, because it's not like it was Les Mis and it's 1,300 pages. It was like a regular book that they turned into novellas and are charging full book prices for.
So wait, before we go on to rant about trilogies.
Yes.
Because mostly, well, you rant. I want to talk about the library is now offering borrow by mail. So if you have been missing books, you've read everything on your bookshelf, you don't want to spend all your money on Amazon or, like me, on Audible, oh my goodness, we are now mailing books to your house for free if you live in Cumberland County and have a library card. If you don't have a library card, we are also giving those away for free. If you do have the means to make a donation to the library, we would appreciate it. That will help us offset the cost because, mailing is not cheap, but this is a way that you can get books and puzzles and audiobooks and DVDs. Yeah, you want to see a movie? You want to see a TV show? Yeah.
And don't forget, we're just sort of pilfering from the Amherst collection at the moment. Yes. So not everything is available, and you can't place holds online, but you can give us a call or email us. So give us a call at 902-667-2135 or email us at information@cumberlandpubliclibraries.ca.
And you can find more information on our website,
www.cumberlandpubliclibraries.ca.
I hope Ron puts a clicker noise in again. He sent me the clicker noise, but I just don't think I'm smart enough to figure out how to make it work when I'm getting you to do the...
If you come in here with a clicker...
Also, I want to remind people about Stay Home and Read Atlantic. It's a partnership that we have with the Atlantic Publishers Marketing. I'm sorry, I didn't write it down this week, and now I can't remember what they all stand for. Anyway, and the Government of Nova Scotia through the Nova Scotia Provincial Library. This week's book, Quarantine, What's Old is New. And it's a historical nonfiction about the early days of Nova Scotia and Halifax and people quarantined on Lawler's Island. I do not plan to read this one. However, I'm sure that people who like local history will find it fascinating. And you can go on to the Nova Scotia Provincial Library's Facebook page, because some of the authors are doing things to support the promotion of their books. So Amy Spurway, who wrote Crow, which was our first week book, did an online author reading through Facebook. So, okay, now, rant about trilogies. Go ahead.
So let's talk about the most famous trilogy ever written.
I bet that I have written down the exact same. So I have my notes in front of me. She has her notes in front of me.
In front of me, not you.
Yeah. What you said. I wrote down most famous 50 Shades. Yes. So 50 Shades sold like hotcakes. We had so many copies at the library when it first came out because everybody wanted to read it. I only read the first book of the trilogy and I punched it. I really did not like that book. You read the whole trilogy, though.
I did read the whole trilogy, which was your fault because...
it is not my fault. You do not do anything I say.
You made me do that. Okay, we're moving on from that because we don't have time. There are other actual good trilogies to talk about. Yeah, not the best book. It was fan fiction, Twilight fan fiction, before it was a book. And, I mean, people went crazy.
But, you know, if you like it, read it, enjoy it, and then ask Chantel for suggestions because she is a smutty book expert.
It did really change the landscape for romance and erotica. I think much more people are openly reading erotica post 50 Shades.
I think so. One of my favorite trilogies, I'm using quotey fingers, is the Hitchhiker's Guide. So this is one of those ones where he in no way planned for this to be a trilogy.
Okay.
Because there are now 6 books.
Well, and that's the same as I was going to say Cassandra Clare and her YA series, The Mortal Instruments. It started out as a trilogy. It ended. It has a nice, neat, happy ending. And then suddenly there were 3 more books in the trilogy.
Yeah, and I think it's because the authors really want to follow up with those characters and
make money. The fans want them.
The readers are clamoring because there are characters that after I've finished a book, I still think about.
Oh, definitely.
And wonder, like, oh, whatever happened to them? Like they're a person.
Exactly.
So The Hitchhiker's Guide, the first book is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Then it's Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Then Life, the Universe, and Everything. So that's the trilogy. And then Douglas Adams put out a 4th book called So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. And then he started calling it a trilogy in 4 parts. And then he put out a 5th book called Mostly Harmless. And Douglas Adams passed away in the late 80s, early 90s. And then Ian Colfer,
yes,
of Artemis Fowl, wrote a 6th book called And Another Thing in the early 2000s. But I have not read that one. I don't know
why you would. I love Ian Colfer, but...
I mean, Douglas Adams is just... Really, those are comfort books for me that I go back to because they're just kind of flip and fun and outrageous things happen that are not in any way probable. And it's just a fun series to read. I don't know that a trilogy in 5 parts is kind of not a trilogy.
Young adults love a trilogy. I mentioned Cassandra Clare. All of her series start out as trilogies, so I can't even think of what the 3rd trilogy is called. But there's the Infernal Devices, which is now 6 books. There's the Mortal Instruments, which is 6 books. The Infernal Devices, which is a prequel, and I love that series. I actually am debating buying book 1, which is read, I think, by Jennifer Ely of Pride and Prejudice, the good BBC Colin Firth one. And then she has another one. I know the first book in the series is called Lady Midnight, but I can't remember what the overall series is called.
I only read Mortal Instruments.
I like that series. It's really fun. I'm sorry the TV show because there was a television series. It was cute.
Was it?
Yes. And the Alec Magnus romance, those 2 actors, amazing. They were so adorable. It was so good.
And then, of course, there's all the dystopian trilogies.
Yes.
Hunger Games.
Yep. Divergent. Not a Dystopian. Daughter of Smoke and Bone.
Oh, right. Lanny Taylor.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's not a dystopian, but
It's a fantasy, I would say, like
it's
a paranormal.
fantasy. Yeah, like it's taking place in a different plane of existence.
Yeah, I guess, with demons and fairies. Graceling,
Graceling.
one of my favorites. Love, love, love.
But that one you don't have to read in order because they're just kind of they're related.
You do kind of need to read it in order because you read Graceling, then Fire is a prequel which leads directly into Bitter Blue because it's her father that's the villain in the second one.
I never read Bitter Blue.
It was good. It wasn't as good. I really loved Graceling and Fire. I loved Fire. It was amazing.
Loved Fire.
It was amazing.
So, what about something like The Raven Cycle? Okay, so I know it's not a trilogy. Maggie Stiefvater.
Yep. 4 books.
Because it's 4 books. Do you think she set out to make that a trilogy and just ended up having more books? Or do you think, like, what?
I don't know. Because there's a lot of history. There's a lot of stuff that happens in that book.
Yeah. I love
because she does have other trilogies, The Wolves of Mercy Falls.
Yes. I did enjoy The Wolves of Mercy Falls, too. She has now put out another book in that I have not read.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so I think she follows one of the werewolves, moves to L.A.
Another famous trilogy that they've now added more books to, the Millennium Trilogy.
Right, because that was published, and then Stieg Larsson passed away. And now they have another author writing.
I'm not saying his name. It's too hard.
It is a hard name, yeah. So there's, I think, 2 books out now.
And that's the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Yes. And the girl who played with fire.
We don't need to give all the titles.
Okay. Sure.
We only have a certain amount of time.
I only read the first one. I did not get the appeal.
That was a big one, too. Everybody read that
Everybody read it. And it's so long, and the action really only happens at the end. And I did not get why it was so popular.
There was a lot of world building, I think, into that one, and a lot of conspiracy and building up those not very nice characters.
Well, and then there's like banking, and none of these things are things I care about. So what are you reading now? Are you reading?
Well, yes, I did finish a book I mentioned on our podcast that we did yesterday on Facebook. I read Undead and Unwed by Mary Janice Davidson and Oldie. I'm also, one of my podcasts, Let's Talk About Miss Baby, is reading the Iliad.
Wow.
So I've been putting that on to go to sleep at night. So I've only made it, I think, past section 1 before I start to fall asleep. But she's doing like 45 minutes, I think, once a week where she's reading a section of the Iliad. So I've been listening to that.
Okay.
I've absorbed none of it. I couldn't tell you one thing that happened in the Iliad.
It's an epic road trip.
Well, yes, I do know that.
So I'm reading Les Mis.
Yes, still.
And I will until the end of time, probably.
Where are you page-wise?
I didn't read anything since we did the podcast yesterday, so I'm about 150 pages in.
Nice.
And it's like 1,300, almost 1,300 pages. Yeah. But I'm also reading 90 Days of Different by Eric Walters.
Okay.
And it's about this young woman. She's just graduated from high school, and her friend convinces her, like, she's very, very responsible and predictable, and her friend convinces her that she should do a different thing every day for 90 days between high school and when university starts. And some of them are really simple things, like going for a whole day without making her bed.
For a more fun version, you could read Beard Science by Penny Reed, where Cletus tells Jennifer to do that as well.
To do...
Change one thing about herself, because her mother's dressed her whole life and created this persona.
Yes. I mean, it's a YA novel, And so most of the things are pretty tame. So I'm about halfway through that.
Hers are pretty tame too. She changes her nail polish. She buys her own clothes for the first time. You read that book?
Yes, I know. I did. I read it. So you've mentioned our podcast. If people are interested in seeing us and our pandemic hair, we have recorded our 3rd episode, and it's on our Facebook page, My Two Favorite Librarians. You can also follow us. There's the library Facebook page, Cumberland Public Libraries. There is our Instagram page,
which I'm starting to repopulate now. It kind of took a dive in the midst of hecticness, but I'm taking it back over and trying to post some things, including my album of the day.
And we're also on Twitter. You can find all of our social handles on our website, which is
www.cumberlandpubliclibraries.ca.
I wish I could make a clicking noise. And next week, we're going to talk about best of lists.
Some of our favorite things, and excellent for researching this radio show.
Yes. So I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye.
Bye.
My Two Favorite Librarians. Brought to you by Copper Tree Boutique in Dales Grand Market, located in beautiful, historic downtown Amherst.